Hello geometry students. So today we're going to take a look at the different types of solids. So let's start off with talking about a solid figure first. A solid figure is a figure that encloses part of space. You know, thinking about like a shoebox. Maybe you bought shoes recently, or maybe you have like a can of soup or a can of vegetables. Okay, it's enclosing something, it's contained in it. Now, there are different types of solid figures. Before we get into the more commonly known ones that you probably recognize, let's talk about a polyhedron, because some of you have heard of this word before. A polyhedron is a solid with flat surfaces that are polygons. So for example, your prism is a polyhedron, a pyramid is a polyhedron, but a cylinder and a cone are not polyhedron because your flat surfaces are not polygons. They are, in this case, circles. Okay, now going back to the fact of a polyhedron, again, talking about my prism or my pyramid, the faces are your flat surfaces formed by polygons in their interiors. So again, flat surfaces formed by polygons and their interiors. Okay, an edge is what you think of like as this one here or this one here. Okay, it's where two faces intersect. So again, these two side ones are going to intersect in that edge. So again, an edge is the intersection of two faces. So like here, this triangle and this triangle intersect with that edge, or this triangle and the bottom intersect with that edge. Those are edges. And a vertex, or your plural would be your vertices, is where three or more edges intersect. So it's the intersection of three or more edges. Okay, so again, this would be a vertex. See, here's my three, there's my vertex here. Okay, so if I look at an example of this particular polyhedron and I talk about the faces, okay, so there are 5 faces in this one. We have the front one, which is a quadrilateral, and I could call it ACFD. We have this one in the back here, which is again a quadrilateral, and it would be BCFE. And then we have the quadrilateral on this side over here, which I would name as ABED. And then we have this top triangle, which would be triangle ABC. And we have the one on the bottom here, which would be triangle DEF. Now the edges, remember, are segments. Okay, so I have edge AD here, I have edge CF, the one in the back, BE, and then the triangle ones. We have segment AB, segment BC, segment AC, as well as in the bottom, segment DE, segment EF, and segment DF. Those are all your edges. Okay, vertices, again, are where they come together. So we've got points A, B, C in the top, and D, E, F in the bottom. So again, A, B, C, D, E, and F. Okay, so again, those are some basics over polyhedron. Okay, so again, that's not your cylinder or your cone, that's like your prism and your pyramid. So we're going to talk specifically in the next few pages about each particular type of solids other than polyhedron in general. Okay, so a prism is a solid with the following characteristics. The two faces, called your bases, that's like your top and the bottom, are formed by congruent polygons that lie in parallel planes. The faces that are not the bases are what we call lateral faces. and they are parallelograms. So that would be like your front here or your side. Those are lateral faces. And the intersection of two adjacent lateral faces are called lateral edges. And they are parallel segments. So like this would be a lateral edge. This one here would be a lateral edge. Again, that would be a lateral edge. This one in the back here would again be a lateral edge. And you name a prism or classify them by the shape of the base. So if we just say the word prism, we don't specifically know which one we're talking about, so we have to use it by the shape of the base. So in this first one, this is a prism. Notice the bases are triangles, so I'm going to call it a triangular prism. And the second one, notice the base down here or at the top, either way you look at it, is a rectangle. So we're going to call it a rectangular prism. Sometimes this one is known as a rectangular solid. Means the same thing. And the one on the right, we have 5 sides. That's a pentagon. So we'll call this pentagonal prism. So again, the base is a pentagon. Now we can also talk about platonic solids. A platonic solid is a solid in which all the faces are congruent regular polygons. So again, it's a solid in which all the faces are congruent regular polygons. So an example of a platonic solid could be a cube. Okay, a cube is a rectangular prism in which all the faces are squares. We talked about this one when we were doing the net the one day. So again, all of these faces, the lateral faces and the two bases, are all congruent, and they're again squares, which makes them regular polygons. So the cube is actually one of the easiest to deal with, in my opinion. Okay, so let's move on to a pyramid. So some of the properties or characteristics of a pyramid: it's a solid, specifically it's a polyhedron, but all the faces except for one intersect at a common point, which is called your vertex. So in this picture, this is your vertex at the top. It's where they all come together except for your base. The face that does not intersect at the vertex is called, like I said, your base, and it's again a polygon. Could be any type of polygon, but it's a polygon. A lot of times we think of them as rectangles or squares, but again, it could be any polygon. The faces meeting at the vertex, these triangle ones, are called lateral faces, and again, they are triangles. Always triangles in a pyramid. And a pyramid is also named by the shape of the base. So I'm not just going to use the word pyramid. I'm going to name the base. So this first one here, the base is a rectangle. So this would be a rectangular pyramid. And the second one here, notice the base is a hexagon. It has 6 sides. So we call it a hexagonal pyramid. Okay. Now the ones we have left are probably easier ones to deal with. Okay. But before we get into those, we talked about a cube. Again, all the faces are squares. In a tetrahedron, I think somebody asked me about this one though one day. Again, in a tetrahedron, this is a triangular pyramid. All of the faces, including the base, are going to be triangles, and they're all going to be congruent triangles. Okay. Now, like I said, for the easier ones, I would think most of you to identify. A cylinder, a cone are both types of solids, but they are not polyhedron polyhedra, again, because the bases are circles and the one base in a cone is a circle. So the way we define a cylinder, it's a solid figure whose bases are formed. Again, we notice the bases are circles. They are congruent circles. They are in parallel planes, and their lateral surface is curved, and whose lateral surface is curved. Okay, if you would actually make a cut here and flatten it out, it actually turns into a rectangle. But again, it's curved. Think about your soup cans or your vegetable or maybe your soda can. Okay, and then like I said, for today at least, we have our cone. A cone is, again, a solid figure in which the base, and again it just has one, so again I'm going to put just one, is a circle. Notice here the base is a circle, and the lateral surface is a curved surface. So notice that there is curved. Now the one I did not talk about in the notes I'm thinking about now is a sphere before I get to the composite solids. So we'll talk about spheres more on a different day. But a sphere is curved, okay, doesn't have any bases. Okay, think of it like a softball, a baseball, a shot put, a basketball, a volleyball, again, tennis ball. Those are all the spherical shapes. Okay, and again, we'll talk about that more a lot more in detail later. But the last thing we're going to talk about today is a composite solid. A composite solid is a solid that's made by combining two or more solids. So in this particular picture, this is an example of a cylinder and a cone. Okay.